if I just took it out of video mode or not. Well, I guess we'll find out. So there is a set of fill-in notes in your Google Classroom, along with a new study guide for Chapter 4. If I were you, and you don't have to do this, but I'd open up a tab with my study guide and a tab with the notes, so that when it comes time to do the study guide, you already have part of it done, because you can copy and paste stuff over. Some of you will do that because it makes life easier. Some of you like your life to be difficult. That's your decision. I did change the color on my slides. It's a little bit different than the color on yours. I like the color because it sort of reminds me of mustard color baby poo in a diaper. Can you see that? Yeah, those of you that have changed a diaper, that's the kind of color you get. And I don't know why baby feces looks like that, but sometimes it's kind of weird. Yeah, so anyway, here we go. New England, those are the states, or the colonies, excuse me, that are the farthest north. How do we figure that out, Mr. B? Okay, well, let's use football again as an analogy, and some of you can answer this and some of you cannot. Where do we find the New England Patriots? What? Yeah, they're around Boston. They're Massachusetts. So anything Massachusetts or north are New England colonies, or today New England states. That's why the New England Patriots are not located in Virginia. So anyway, they're the most populous region. What does populous mean? Yeah, more people. So if I ask you to tell me what part of Nebraska is the most populous, the answer would be the area around Omaha. And then we've got pockets of population like Lincoln, Grand Island, Kearney, North Platte. But most of the population of the state of Nebraska is centered around Omaha. So Omaha, Papillion, Millard, Ralston, Gretna, Elkhorn, Blair, Bennington, all of the little teeny tiny communities that satellite the city of Omaha, we make up the bulk of the population. It's the most populous area. If you go out into the middle of the state, those of you that have ever driven across Nebraska, what do you see? Corn and cows, and that's it. Once in a while, a house or a truck stop. There's not much out there. I grew up out there. So, gas stations, because you got to fuel up. So it's the most populous. Lots of people live in New England. They have poor farmland. The soil is kind of rocky, so it doesn't grow the bestest crops. They have a short growing season, so it's not really great for farming, but they are really good with trade. Why is trade so good in the New England colonies? Because they have great ports. It's easy to dock ships in New England and unload and load stuff. So that's what they're really good at. Nebraska would be a farm state. We're really good at growing corn and cows. The New England states are really good at trade. Get stuff from Europe. They also have the best fishing. Like commercial fishing, where you're catching fish to sell so that other people can eat them. Or whaling. Whaling means you're catching whales, but not on a fishing pole, because that would not be a very good idea.
It would be a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, we should be wrong at good.
Yeah. But don't most of them eat like plankton, so we need the tiniest person for bait. So that's kind of weird. I'm not going to cut any of you into tiny pieces. So let's talk about whaling for a minute. Does anybody know why whaling even occurred? Yes. Yeah, they're fat. And the fatness turns into oil, but it's not a super simple process. In fact, it's very, very dangerous. Whaling was probably in colonial times the most dangerous job that a person could have, or one of the most. So let me describe it to you. They take a big ship. Now, big ship, again, probably fits in my classroom with Mr. Zurich's classroom. So take off the roof, remove the wall. We probably can squeeze it right in here. That ship has 5 or 6 smaller boats that can be lowered into the water, and then you put 10 to 12 men on each of those, and they can row it. They don't have any motor boats. It's all sails and rowing power, manpower. So the big ship sails off into the distance into areas where they believe there are whales. When they see the whales, because whales are mammals, they have to surface and get some air. They shoot stuff out their blowhole, they splash their tails down. When they see them off in the distance, they lower those other 5 or 6 ships into the water with crews of 12 men, and they have them row in the direction, not where the whales are, but where they think the whales are gonna be. So they don't all row together, they kind of fan out and go just a little bit different directions. When one ship gets above a pod of whales, and these creatures are so gigantic, they're typically not scared of a boat that's a fraction of their size. When a whale surfaces to get a breath of fresh air, they take a sharp harpoon and jab it into the back of the whale. The harpoon won't come out. It's kind of like a fish hook. It's got a barb on the end of it, so that barb sticks into the whale. To a whale, it probably doesn't even, I'm just guessing because I've never been a whale, doesn't even hurt that much. It's like, ow! It's kind of like when a horsefly bites your leg. Or a mosquito. It's like, dang it! And you smack it off because it hurts, but it didn't really hurt. It was more of an annoyance. So the whale feels this harpoon jabbed into its back, is ticked off. He's like, what the heck? And takes off swimming like a jet rocket. It goes down below, and as it goes below, there's a rope connected to the harpoon that's connected to the boat. The rope begins to uncoil. You get your foot caught in that rope as it uncoils, what happens? You're going in and you're gonna die. You get in between the boat and the rope when that whale takes off, what happens? It slices you in half. Because we're talking about a whale that weighs several tons. And the boat's not that big. So the whale takes off, pulling the boat behind it. They call it a Nantucket, which is a New England city, sleigh ride. It's kind of like being pulled on a sled behind a four-wheeler. It's a lot of fun, but it's kind of scary because if you get thrown off, you're going to break your neck or something. It could be bad. So the whalers are just hanging on for dear life as they're being towed by this harpoon that's jabbed into the back of a whale. Eventually, the whale gets tired, and it comes to the surface. They row up to it and jab it with another harpoon. The whale might have enough energy to get angry and take off again. Eventually, the whale is exhausted, comes to the surface, and they kill it. Now, we've got a whale attached to the side of a small boat. Whales float. They say that fat floats really well, but I sink like a rock to the bottom when I go in the pool, so I'm not really sure how their thought process is. But whales, they just bob to the surface. They don't sink. So they tie it to the side of this boat. Now they have to row it back to they call it the mothership. Rowing a whale that weighs several tons through the ocean back to the mothership. Remember, that whale swam a long ways before it wore out, and we might have had to row that boat several miles to get above that pod of whales. And there isn't any communication. It's not like you can get on the radio and say, hey, mothership, USS Bellamy, could you come and get us? Because there's no communication. So they got to row until they find their way home, back to the ship. Once they get back to the ship, they tie the whale to the side of the big boat. It's a huge whale. They can't pull it on board because it's too big. They take 4-foot-long saws and knives, and they saw off 30 or 40-pound chunks of blubber, just pure fat. Throw it up on the deck. So imagine the difficulty of even walking on the deck of a ship that's covered with grease, whale fat. It's like if we didn't have carpet in here, if we just had, like the science classrooms have linoleum floors, if we covered them in butter, and I said, go ahead and jog across the floor, what's going to happen? You know, that in and of itself is dangerous, let alone if you have waves at sea. So that's pretty scary. But you can't just save the fat. By the way, what is the whale oil useful for? Make it into candles. Make it into oil for lanterns and even heating fuel. Whale oil had uses in almost every area of usefulness. But the fat itself will get rancid. It will turn rotten fairly quickly in the sun that's beaten on the deck of the boat. So, in order to make the whale fat useful, they have to render it into oil. Okay, so how about an open fire on the deck of a wooden ship? How smart is that? How about an open fire on the deck of a wooden ship that's covered with oil, which is flammable? Real smart. This is super dangerous. So they throw these gigantic chunks of fat up on the deck, and they throw them in cauldrons. Underneath the cauldron, they'll have a small fire. They don't need a lot of heat, just a little bit. And underneath the fire, there are bricks to protect the wood. Otherwise, it'd burn right through the deck of the ship. So they're trying to be as safe as they can, but lots of whale ships burn. So they start a fire, and the fat inside the cauldron melts. So I want you to like, fat melt? Okay. So just raise your hands if you've ever cooked bacon before. Because everybody loves bacon except for Pollocky. Everybody should love bacon. It's so good. Anyway, when you start out with a piece of bacon, it's this wide, like 2 inches wide, and what, like 8 inches long? After it's cooked, how big is it? Like a fourth that size. What happened to all of it? Yeah, the white part on that piece of bacon, which is most of the bacon, is fat, so it melts when you apply heat to it. And then you have a skillet full or a pan that's full of grease. It's pig fat that's rendered into oil, which, by the way, is also flammable. It smells really good, but it's flammable. So, by the way, anybody have a Blackstone griddle at home? I got one of those for Father's Day. That thing is awesome, especially cooking bacon. It doesn't splatter up your kitchen. Doesn't stink up your house. You do it outside. If you don't have one, you should get one if you like to grill. I have a smoker, a gas grill, a charcoal grill, a Blackstone. I got a little bit of everything. It's fun. Anyway, so they catch a whale, they cut it up, they throw it in the thing. Once it's rendered into grease, they pour the grease into gigantic wooden barrels. Then, after the ship is full of barrels of whale fat, and it might take months to do this, they go back to port where they sell their fat. Whaling today is illegal almost everywhere because the whales, there just aren't very many of them, so we protect the species. The only people in America that can get permission to whale are indigenous people, so Native Americans, that's part of their culture and part of their traditions. So like the Inuit in Alaska, they can get a permit. I don't know if it's every year or not, but they have to follow the traditional ways of hunting a whale. They can't go out on a boat with a big pneumatic harpoon and shoot one and then shoot it in the head with a high-powered rifle. They have to use the same skills that they used 100 or 200 years ago. So whaling was hugely dangerous, but that's where the whales were, so they made lots of money off of it. They also have amazing forestry. It's great for shipbuilding. Look at this. Just to build one ship, it takes 2,500 trees. Holy smoly, that's a lot of sticks. And you can't just cut down a tree and make it into a ship because it's green. Anybody in here have a fireplace at home, so you got to go out sometimes with mom and dad on the weekends and chop firewood, chainsaw some firewood? If you go out today and cut down a tree, one that has leaves on it and it's alive, when will you actually burn that wood? Yeah, you gotta let it dry out. So are you gonna burn it this winter? No, you cut down next winter's firewood this summer. Or you find a tree that's already dead and cut it down and you can burn it right away. So you gotta wait till it dries out a little bit. 2,500 trees for one boat. That's crazy, the amount of stuff that it takes to build a ship. 1651, so we're looking at not quite 400 years ago. The English are going to create a set of laws called the Navigation Acts. And they're really not fair to the colonists that live in America. These laws only apply to the colonists living in America. It would be like the United States passes a set of laws that only affect those of us that live on the moon. We still see ourselves as Americans, but Americans living in America don't have to follow these laws. Only those of us living on the moon. Does that seem fair? No, it doesn't seem fair. It'd be like saying in middle school, we're going to create a rule that says 8th graders don't get lunch.
What?
We don't have time to feed you, so we're just going to keep having class. 8th graders don't get to eat, but 6th and 7th graders do. Is that fair? No. So that's kind of what the Navigation Acts are. Let's talk about a few of these. There's 4 parts to the Navigation Acts. By the way, this is kind of the first of a string of things where the British government are kind of poking us in the ribs. If I walk up to you and I poke you in the shoulder like that, the first time I do it, you look at me like, why did you just touch me? The second time I do it, you're like, you did it again. What is going on? The third time I do it, you're like, okay, now I'm getting angry. The fourth time I do it, you swat my arm away. The 5th time I do it, you punch me in the nose. Right?
Yeah.
I get away with almost anything once or twice, but then after a while, you're like, okay, I've had enough. Stop picking on me. The British are poking us in the ribs as colonists, as Americans. We're not a country of America yet, but they're going to keep poking us in the ribs. Look at the year. It's 1651. Trivia question 101 for you. Does anybody know what year we finally have had enough getting poked in the ribs so we decide we want to be our own country? Somebody said it. I just couldn't hear it very well.
1776.
1776. So we're going to let them poke us in the ribs for another 124 years, 125 years? It's little things, one after another. The Navigation Acts go a long ways towards ticking us up. So let me give you the letter A, the first example. All goods, should be an S there, had to be carried on English ships. You're like, well, who cares? Here's the deal. If I'm a Virginia tobacco grower, I harvested a big, fat crop of tobacco. Where's the market for my tobacco? Probably England, but Europe. So I could sell it to the English, the Spanish, the French, the Portuguese, the Dutch. My market is to wealthy Europeans. It's not in America. So I have to get my high-grade Virginia tobacco from my plantation in Virginia all the way to Europe. So to do that, I got to find somebody that's got a boat. Kara is an English ship captain. She's got an English ship. So I go to Kara and I say, how much would you charge me to haul my tobacco to England? And Kara says, $100. Okay. That doesn't sound bad, but I want to get another estimate. You have a French ship. You're a French captain. Oui, Mr. Bellamy. So I say, how much would you charge to haul my tobacco to Europe? And she says, $75. Assuming that I trust them both equally, and they both have nice ships, which one am I going to hire? Why would I hire the French one? She's cheaper, which means I make more money if I don't have to spend as much money to get my crop to Europe. So you're hired. This law in the Navigation Act says I can only use the English ship. So I'm like, oh, stupid law. I'm sorry, Frenchie, I can't use you. I go back to the English ship and I'm like, okay, Kara, you said $100, right? Now it's $200 because I have to use an English ship. And there's no competition. Her price was only $100 because she thought she was going to be cheaper than the French captain. The French captain's been sitting in port for a month waiting for a load, so she'll just go. I'll take whatever I can get. So she undercut the English captain. Now that it's only English ships, $200. I'm like, what? Are you crazy? Well, that's what it is, Mr. Bellamy. Fine! $200, stupid Englishman. It upsets me. It makes me angry because I just lost a large chunk of profits. Who benefits from letter A of the Navigation Acts? English ship captains. Carriage just made an extra $100. And it's like, this just really chaps my hide. Then the second part, letter B, tobacco, wood, and sugar could only be sold to England. So I'm stuck using carriage ship. Before I look at letter B of the Navigation Acts, I'm like, well, my market is in Spain. The Spanish tobacco buyer offers me $1,000 for my tobacco. The English tobacco buyer offers me $750 for my tobacco. Who am I selling to? Do I care that she's Spanish? All I'm about is making money, so I'm selling it to the Spanish. Letter B says my tobacco can only be sold to the English. He was $75. He's $25 less. Or was it $750? He's $250 less. So I go back and I'm like, okay, so $750, right? What happens to his offer now that I can only sell it to Englishmen? It goes down. He's like, oh, $500. So it costs me more to ship it, and I'm going to receive less money. It's like, this is not fair. It makes me so angry. Fine. Take my tobacco. Cheating me. By the way, what does he do with it when he gets it to England? To the Spaniard that's going to pay you more. So the English in England and English ship captains are profiting big time off of my labor in the colonies as an American Englishman. I'm not being treated equally. Englishmen in England don't have to deal with these rules. But it is only tobacco and wood and sugar. Imports into the colonies had to use English ports, so I can't bring something into Florida and then distribute it amongst the rest. I can only use English ports. And there's a tax on any goods that aren't shipped to England. So anything besides tobacco, wood, and sugar has to pay an extra tax if I ship it to the Spanish or to the French or the Portuguese or the Dutch. So the Navigation Acts were strictly created to make it more difficult for the colonists to profit, and they made sure England had the most prosperity off of the resources of the New World. So, excuse me, these laws are really like the first two pokes in the ribs. Ow, that kind of hurts. Stop poking me in the ribs. Ow, you poke me again. Eventually, 125 years later, we're going to say, I feel like that's what they say when they karate chop. We're going to karate chop the British, except even when that happens, it's kind of like America is a little toddler and the British are a full-grown adult. Are any of you besides Brady afraid of toddlers? No, they're little and they can't really hurt you. So we got a long ways to go. Yeah, they can bite. They bite you a lot. But Brady, Shelby can bite too, and he's afraid of her too. So there's a lot of fear in Brady's world. Pretty bad. Yes. Say that again. Oh, like a whole army of toddlers? An army of toddlers with teeth and scissors. Wow. I have nightmares sometimes about an army of 8th graders with scissors. That's why we only let you use safety scissors. So when you stab me, it hurts less. Yes?
I would be more scared of a toddler with a gun than a grown man.
How did they get a gun now?
Yeah,
Holy cow.
toddlers can't find
Armed
anything.
toddlers.
No,
How about this guy?
Toddlers.
So those Navigation Acts are horrible for the colonists. Check out this guy. This guy's name is Blackbeard. Oh yeah, I skipped up there at the top. Smuggling. So here's the deal. If I'm a Virginia tobacco grower and I really feel that I'm being unfairly treated using the Navigation Acts, I could take a chance and go to that French captain, or Spanish, who was my captain? Spanish, the Spanish captain, and I could say, hey, in the middle of the night, let's load up my tobacco and get going. Take it to the Spanish tobacco buyer, and then I could still make all my money. That's called smuggling. Smuggling out or smuggling in. There's a show on, I think it's Discovery Channel, maybe A&E. It's called like To Catch a Smuggler or something like that, where they catch people at airports smuggling drugs into the country. It's actually kind of a cool show. You can see all their hiding spots and stuff where they try to sneak it in. But the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency of the United States, is really pretty good at figuring out where the bad guys are hiding stuff. And dogs can sniff it out and stuff. It's really kind of a cool show. But here's the thing. If I load my tobacco on that Spanish ship to take to Spain to the Spanish buyer, and the English find out that I've done it, what happens to my shipload of tobacco? Poof! It's confiscated by the English. I just lost everything. So when we take away competition, when there's only one buyer, the price changes. I'm going to go back because I have a good example. When your car's on empty and you need gas, you drive down the street and there's a gas station on the right side of the street that says $2.99 a gallon. And on the left side of the street, there's a gas station that says $2.89 a gallon. Where do you go? $2.89. Why is one cheaper than the other? Competition. That whoever owns that gas station knows that since their gas is cheaper, you're going to go there. Now, if you own a gas station, I've heard from gas station people that they don't really make their money in the gas anyway. They make their money because when you go to the gas station, you go inside and you get a bag of sunflower seeds and you buy a Pepsi and you stock up on that stuff. That's where they make the big bucks. You get one of those things off of the rolling heater they called a tornado or something like that. It just tears your guts up, but they taste delicious. Or you go into Taylor Quick Pick and you have to buy one bag of donut holes left and you feel like you have to get them because you can't just leave one bag of donut holes. Anybody else love donut holes? I like donut holes way better than donuts. I don't know why that is. Yeah. They're so yummy. Anyway, so what would happen? I think there's probably like 8 or 9 gas stations in Blair. I don't know. I've never counted them, but that seems about right. You can probably count them, but who cares? What if one person owned them all? What would happen to the price of gas? It'd go up because they could charge whatever they want within reason. Now, the problem with that is we still have competition because Omaha's not that far away. Omaha's a little bit cheaper anyway, so some of you probably get your gas in Omaha. If your mom drives to work there every day anyway, she just gas up there where it's a little bit cheaper. But if we were 100 miles away from the nearest gas station, whoever owned those stations could charge $3.50, and we wouldn't have a choice. It's the same type of thing. So what we're going to do is smuggle gas in to Blair, America. Not only am I going to go fill my truck up in Omaha, but I'm going to fill all my gas cans too. And then when I get back to Blair, instead of charging $3.50, I can sell you my gas for $3.25, and you're going to buy it out of my gas cans because it's a better deal. That's called smuggling. Sneaking it in. Usually it's illegal, but drugs, humans smuggled into the United States sometimes illegally. Anything that's not supposed to be here. Pirates were disruption to trade. This guy's name is Blackbeard. He's the most notorious pilot. The word notorious kind of means like famous, but usually famous for a bad reason. His real name was Edward Teach. No wonder he goes by Blackbeard. Anyway, we used to have a guy here, he was a teacher, and his name was Fred Teach. A long, long time ago. You might have taught some of your parents. But Fred Teach, he was a PE teacher for a while, and then he was Mr. Udy before Mr. Udy was Mr. Udy. So that class, tech, whatever we call it, FCS tech. So Mr. Teach actually could trace his ancestry back to this guy. Isn't that a scary looking dude? Fearsome. The guy would put lit beards or lit fuses in his beard so that he looked creepier. There'd be smoke rolling off of the guy's head. Probably his hair would catch on fire. And also, it looks like he hasn't bathed for a while. His goal was to look as scary as possible, and he scared a lot of people. He's the most notorious. I told you a really nice story about Captain Black Sam Bellamy and how he was a good guy. Captain Sam Bellamy actually got his start working for Blackbeard. So he was one of the lower pirates working for Blackbeard. Then he moves on later. But this guy was scary. He's the original Pirates of the Caribbean. He way tougher looking than Johnny Depp. Even though it appears that Blackbeard wore eye makeup also. Okay, in the Atlantic, we've got this thing called triangular trade. Now, here's where the people that can't see my class are going to struggle a little bit because I'm going to go over on the whiteboard and I'm going to draw some pictures. And I'm really good at drawing. I'm really bad at drawing. So you're going to have to try really hard, but you're going to be able to see what I'm drawing. I can just draw this like this. Some squiggles in there. Come down here. Okay, and then I'm going to draw here. That with some of these. Islands, good. And over here I'm going to draw. And out here I'm going to draw.
A mushroom. America. Puddles. That's the other side. Europe. Alaska.
Okay, so here we have. This is America, right? It's colonies. You can see Florida. We've got the islands here. This is Africa. And up here we have, here's England, right? So let's label some of this. We don't need Japan on here. So we have England. We're going to talk about West Africa. I'll label it WA, West Africa. This area here, all these islands in the Caribbean, they're called the West Indies, WI, West Indies. And then we've got America up here. And we're specifically going to talk about this part of America, which are called the New England colonies. So we're going to talk about triangular trade, but I just drew 4 points on the map, which means maybe instead of triangular trade, it should be called square trade, rectangle trade. But most of the trade is going to take place between 3 points on the map. The worst part of the trade is going to take place between 3 points on the map. And then England is going to get the bulk of the profits from all of it. They're also going to contribute to the triangular trade. So let's start out in Africa, because that's the easiest place to start. What product, that's not really nice to say product, is coming out of West Africa? Slaves. So I'm going to draw an arrow, just like that, and I'll label it slaves are coming out of West Africa. Now, we'll talk later about how those slaves are captured and put on ships and brought to America. That's probably a Friday lesson. Today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, Friday lesson. So slaves are brought to the West Indies. In the West Indies, they're used to grow a specific crop, not one that we've talked about yet. They're not growing rice or tobacco or indigo. They're growing sugar cane. Very labor intensive. So sugar. Why are they growing sugar? Yeah, am I too loud today? Was it bothering Mr. Zurich? If it bothers Mr. Zurich, I'll get louder.
Get loud.
Yeah.
And then, yes, he did. I think it was yesterday during fourth class video.
Good. Anyway, so they're growing sugar, but it's not because everyone liked candy. The sugar was actually used to make a product called molasses. It's kind of like syrup. Now, some of you are like, I've never heard of molasses before. I've never seen molasses before. Some of you have no idea what molasses. Has anybody ever baked Christmas cookies with grandma? You make ginger snaps. If you've made ginger snaps before, you've probably used molasses. So I'm going to go back here in the secret cabinet where everything important. Oh, look at this.
Throw it at Brady. See if he catches
Do you
it.
think there's any other humans that own a rubber chicken with pants?
Yes.
I
I do.
I think I'm all by myself in that one. Or I do have a small rubber goose that squeaks.
Throw it at Brady. See if he catches it. Yeah, throw it at Brady.
Or if you look really closely, this is one of my most prized possessions in the planet. I have a box of oatmeal cream pies and all of their golden deliciousness. Everybody likes oatmeal cream pies. But there's a story with my oatmeal cream pies. I need it in this cupboard. I was in the wrong cupboard. So I used to be kind of addicted to oatmeal cream pies. Like, I love them. So before I was really fat, I used to keep a lot of snacks. And I always had boxes of oatmeal cream pies in the cabinet. Well, I forgot about a box once. So like a year later, I found this box stuffed in the back of my cabinet. I got them out and I thought, I wonder what they look like. They're probably all moldy. They looked exactly like fresh ones. Tasted one, couldn't tell the difference. Year-old oatmeal cream pies were the same as day-old oatmeal cream pies because there's so much preservatives in them. So I thought, let's do an experiment. I taped the box shut. There's, I think, 10 oatmeal cream pies out of 12 in that box still. Those are 20-plus year-old oatmeal cream pies.
Ew.
I'd like to open them and take a look and see what they look like, but I'm going to save them until the year I'm ready to retire, which is probably about 10 more years. Then I'm going to crack them open and see if there's any difference between a 30-plus-year-old oatmeal cream pie and a fresh one. Then I'm going to take that one step further. I'm going to try to get a student to eat them.
I will.
I think there will be plenty of volunteers. So that's like one of my most prized possessions. Let me demonstrate something. This is molasses. So they take sugar to make it into this stuff. Now, I know it's kind of hard to see, but you see how dark it is? It kind of looks like motor oil.
Yeah.
Watch this. When I tip the jar and then tip it back, it doesn't really, it's runny, but it's so thick that it doesn't just, it's not watery. It's not even syrupy. It's thicker than that. So this is a fun experiment. Watch this. Sorry, people that are listening to this, if this is actually working. So I take this. I want to just pour just a little bit onto my plate here. Really thick. Yeah, and kerplunk. I better put the lid on because if I spill that, the janitor's going to get really, really angry. So look at this. Look how thick this is. It barely flows even when in fact, watch this. This is one of my favorite things to do. We should try to set a record and see if I can hold it for 10 seconds without flipping it.
Oh.
If this gets in your hair, it's like a new product.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It didn't even drip. This stuff is crazy thick. Look at that. It's almost dripped. It's like when you go to Dairy Queen and they have to flip your Blizzard, you know. That's kind of like that. Now, back before we were all scared of dying of COVID, I used to take this and pass it around, and if you wanted to taste it, you could just put your little finger in it and daub off a little bit. But that'd probably be a really bad idea because of the COVID. So it has a unique taste. Has anybody tasted just straight molasses? Now, from my experience, about 5 or 6 of you, from my experience, you either love it or you hate it. It's not really it's good or bad. I don't like it at all. I think it tastes like black licorice. That's not the flavor anybody else uses to describe it, but that's and I don't like black licorice. Anybody in here like the flavor of it? My grandmother used to put it on pancakes instead of syrup. I'm like, Grandma, that is so gross. So, unfortunately, I can't let you taste it because I don't want you to get the COVID. But it also has a very distinct smell, kind of a sweet, burnt smell. So I'll pass it around, and if you want to take whiff of it, go ahead and take a whiff of it because you can't get hurt by smelling my molasses. If you don't want to smell it, don't smell it. But take a whiff. If you want to hold it over Kara's head, then you can. But sniff it. It's got kind of a horse feed smell. In fact, do I have any horse people?
Kind of.
You have a horse? Okay. Sometimes, well, I used to work for a guy. We had horses and four-wheelers. I always chose the four-wheeler, probably because I've told you my horse stories. But he'd have a bag of feed that was sticky. It had oats in it and other stuff horses like, and it was coated in molasses. It's got a flavor that horses really, really like. So that is, it's a treat for animals. They think it's really yummy, but it's made out of sugar. So it's used to sugar. Slaves grow the sugar cane, which is used to make molasses. Now, there's not a big enough market to make the molasses trade that big, so they ship the molasses to New England. Where the molasses is made into rum. What is rum? It's an alcohol. Okay. Now, I don't want to make this sound bad, but it does kind of sound bad. In colonial times, almost everyone, probably including people as young as you, would drink rum every day. So rum was kind of like Mountain Dew. It was normal for everyone to drink it. Adults would drink it during the workday at lunchtime. The British Navy actually allowed an allotment of rum to each of their sailors every day. It is alcohol, so if you drink too much, you get drunk and you're not very productive. But that wasn't the purpose of drinking rum. Rum was safer to drink than water. Quiet, guys, please. So once it's distilled into alcohol, it kills all the microorganisms that were making people sick. If you drink the water, those microorganisms get into your tummy and they give you diseases like dysentery, bloody explosive diarrhea. Cha, cha, cha. If you drink rum, the alcohol has killed all of the microorganisms so it doesn't make you sick. So rum was super normal. So slaves from West Africa to the West Indies to grow sugarcane to make molasses traded to New England where it's made into rum. Then from New England, the rum, thank you, was either sold to the English, where the English would then ship back other trade goods like manufactured items. So we got rum going to England, manufactured items like pots and pans or guns. We didn't really have any factories in America. So all the stuff that had to be produced in a factory was traded rum for manufactured goods. Now, I don't really see a triangle yet. Here's what happens. From New England, they take the manufactured goods and some of the rum, manufactured goods and rum, to West Africa where it's traded for more slaves to grow more sugar, to make more molasses, to make more rum, to buy more slaves, to make more sugar, to make more molasses, to make more rum, to buy more slaves. See my triangle? And in between, profit and trade is going to England. The worst part of triangular trade, hands down by far, is this portion right here, where the slaves are traded. That portion is called the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage. So the worst part of triangular trade is Middle Passage. Now, on your Chapter 4 test, you're going to be asked to recreate something kind of like this. You need to have an understanding of how triangular trade works and what the three main points in triangular trade are. So if you're drawing it out for me, you can either add the English part in, or you can just have the three main points in the triangle, and I'll get that. But it's trade between those 3 points on the map, and it greatly increases, one, the need for slaves in North America, or at least the West Indies, and the slave trade from Africa to the West Indies. So a big negative as a result of that. Rum, sugar, molasses, and slaves. Anybody just feel like going and licking this up here?
I got it on my nose. Yeah,
You're kind of. You in?
Yeah.
All right. That's like,
Just actually just look.
oh yeah. Have you tasted it before?
No.
Right now you're like, I can't tell if I like it or I hate it.
I think I like it. It's actually good.
Really? I think it's disgusting. Smells like what?
Sugar cookies.
Sugar cookies?
Smells like soy sauce.
You know, other people say soy sauce. I've heard that multiple times. I can't smell that in it. So it's one of those things that is just almost indescribable because we all have a little bit different flavor of that stuff. Let's see. It's second block. We get out at what time? 11:10. What time is it? I'm having like 10:53. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do because we are on recording mode. Hopefully we're on recording mode.